Hi, today I gonna share with you the topic about resolving thermoelectric paradox in superconductors, which is about the superconductors areas that trying using the thermoelectric materials, and the abstract is about uh, for most a century, thermoelectricity in superconductors has been one of the most intriguing topics in physics. During its early stage in the 1920s, the mere extent of thermoelectric effect in superconductors was questioned. In 1944, it was demonstrated that the effect may occur in homogeneous superconductors. Theoretical breakthrough followed in the 1970s, when the generation of a measurable thermoelectric magnetic flux in superconducting loops was predicted. However, a major crisis developed when experiments showed puzzling dis- discrepancy with the theory. Moreover, different experiments were inconsistent with each other. This led to a stalemate in bringing theory and experiment into agreement. With this work, we resolve this stalemate, thus solving this long-standing paradox and open prospects for explorations of novel thermoelectric phenomena predicted recently. So, the introduction is about the temperature gradient applied to a superconductor S will yield an electricity current, where the notation is about the thermoelectric coefficient. It is carried by quasi-particles, the unpaired normal charge carriers that exist at finite temperature in any superconductor and behave similarly to conduction electron in a normal metal. However, in contrast to a normal metal, the total current in the bulk of a homogeneous superconductor vanishes because the thermoelectric current is cancelled by the superconducting currents, ensuring that the total current in the bulk is zero. To obey the main Meissner effect. What renders the thermoelectric supercurrent measurable is its relation to the gradient of the macroscopic phase of the thermoconductic condensate wave function, where an S is the concentrations of superconducting electrons. Combining these two equations, we can find out that the application of temperature gradient to the superconductor creates a phase difference across the superconductor. The phase difference is analogous to the difference in electrochemical potential across the end of a normal metal placed in the temperature gradient. When the ends of the superconductor S are connected by a dissimilar superconductor S prime, making a closed loop, as in Figure 1a, a circulating supercurrent I flowing within penetration depth is induced, generating a thermoelectric magnetic field. and the corresponding thermoelectromagnetic flux. Practical measurement of thermoelectromagnetic flux become feasible with the emergence of extremely sensitive magnetic matters based on superconducting quantum interference device (SQUIDS). A squid contains a superconducting loop interrupted by weak link, making it sensitive to the magnetic flux threading the loop. When the loop is coupled to the biometrically superconducting loop via mutual inductance M, the flux becomes dependent on the supercurrent circulating in the biometrically loop. Well, this notation is the flux through the interferometer loop areas generated by sources other than the biometrically loop. The circulating supercurrent I and the associated thermoelectric flux can be measured when one of the contacts of the biometric loop is heated, thus creating a temperature gradient. The first thermoelectric flux measurement was in a reasonable agreement with the existing theory. However, further experiments showed temperature-dependent magnetic flux up to 5 orders of magnitude larger than the predicted by theory, with unexpected dependence on the temperature. From an experimental viewpoint, the genuine thermoelectric effect could be masked by concomitant effects that may occur in the presence of a background field due to the temperature dependence of the penetration depth of the superconductor. To minimize spurious effects, an ingenious experiment was undertaken using a biometrically superconducting torus to minimize contribution of the background magnetic field. Nevertheless, an unexpectedly large temperature-dependent flux was still observed. Such a large thermoelectric flux would imply giant values for the superconducting components of the thermoelectric current and similar values for the quasi-particle component. Yet, the experimentals that followed revealed a paradoxical mismatch between the values of thermoelectric and superconducting. The measured quasi-particle current was order of magnitude smaller than the supercurrent and agree well with the theory. No possible explanations for the observable and no experimentally supported analysis have been offered to date, and the paradox remains unveiled. Here we solve this paradox. We explain the reason why the masking effect was not included completed in previous experimental, and present experimental result of the separation of genuine thermoelectric flux from the masking effect. Theoretically, we reduce a new formula connecting the thermoelectric magnetic flux and the current security in the loop in the pressure of a temperature gradient. For calculations, we use the method suggested recently, taking into account the energy balance in the system. Our proof of principle experimental agree well with this new theory. In the presence of background external field B, the current circulating in the biometrically loop is present even in the absence of the temperature gradient and keeps the number k of flux quantum trapped in the biometrically loop constant in accordance with the quantization rules for the flux through the biometrically loop. Where this notation equals to the flux generated by external field through the biometrically loop area. L2 is the self-inductance of the loop, and K equal to 0, positive and minus 1 and 2, and so on. As a result, a total flux through the interferometer loop is equal to these equations. A heating of one of the contacts of the biometrically loop not only creates a temperature gradient but also increasing the average temperature of the loop. Although the temperature gradient induces a thermoelectric flux, a rise in the temperature result is in an increase of penetration depth with the corresponding change of the effect area of loop and inductance. Taking into account that usually the change are relatively small, the flux increment induced by heating is given as the following equations. The signal measured by the quantum interferometer is periodically function of phi I with the period equal to the flux quantum. In practice, the interferometer signal oscillations are measured as a function of magnetic field B with periodic and phase of the oscillations functions depending on M, L2, and A2 and the K number. The flux increment results in the phase shift of the oscillations. They induce the thermoelectric flux contribution, the third term, and contributing due to the change in the penetration depth. The effect, the first and second terms, the first effect phase shift corresponding to the change in the oscillation period and depends on the ambient magnetic field. The second shift is K dependent. The effect contribution may exceed the contribution of thermoelectric flux by several orders of magnitude. Although the first phase shift can be calculated using precise enough measurement of the period of oscillation at different temperature gradient values, the second shift is practically indistinguishable from the thermal flux contribution when control the number of flux quantum K trapped in the biometrically loop is lacking. Moreover, fluctuation in the K values from one experimental to the another may lead to scattering the measured values. The previous experimental used microscopic loops of several millimeters in diameters, that corresponding to about 10 trepid flux quanta due to the geometrical field. To precisely determine and control the K value is such large loop as well as measure the periodic of oscillation. One of the control the absolutely magnetic field with a precision of about 10 minus 9 Tesla, an extremely difficult task that was never done. Consequently, separations of the genuine thermoelectric flux has not been completed, leaving a puzzle discrepancy between the theory and the experimental unexplained. The conceptual and technological advance reported here is based on highly sensitive hybrid quantum interferometers coupled to the biometrically loop fabric using modern nanolithography with areas up to 5 orders of magnitude smaller than those measured previously. This allows of both precise control of the number of trapping flux quanta and measurements of the change in the oscillation period under the temperature gradient. The thermal flux is separated using characteristic phase shift in the quantum interface oscillations that are independent of the applied magnetic field and K numbers. A measured thermoelectric flux change is signed upon reversal of the direction of the temperature gradient, a distinctive feature of a genuine thermoelectrical effect.